You know, when we think about these absolutely massive engineering projects, our minds usually go straight to the concrete, the steel, and of course the deadlines. But what if I told you the real work, the stuff that actually decides if a project sinks or swims, happens way before the first shovel even touches the ground? Today, we're going to dive into a totally new way of thinking about these high-stakes games based on the brilliant insights from the strategic management of large engineering projects.
Look, from the aqueducts of ancient Rome to the mega dams we see today, humanity has always been about taking on these enormous, world-changing projects. They literally shape our civilization. But, and this is a big but, they also carry immense risk. And believe me, today the stakes, we're talking financial, social, and political, are higher than they have ever been.
And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? In a world that's just in constant flux, where everything is uncertain, is a traditional playbook for managing these massive projects, well, is it completely broken? The answer might surprise you.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start by getting a feel for the modern project landscape. Then, we'll dig into this really fascinating paradox about planning. After that, we'll unlock 5 principles that turn big challenges into huge advantages. We'll see what this new approach actually looks like in the real world, and finally, we'll reveal the new golden rule for success.
All right, let's jump right in. First up, the new playing field. You have to understand that today's large engineering projects aren't just complicated versions of old ones. Now, they are a fundamentally different beast altogether.
So what makes them so different? Well, it really boils down to these 3 things. First, you've got strategic interdependencies. Your project doesn't exist in a bubble, right? Its success is tangled up in this whole web of partners, agencies, and regulators, and any one of them can change the entire game on a dime. Second, irreversible commitments. I mean, when you're talking about billions of dollars, a lot of these decisions are one-way streets. You can't just undo a bridge. And finally, there's dynamic instability. The economic and political ground is constantly shifting under your feet, which means long-term plans can become obsolete almost the second you print them.
Now, this crazy, unstable world leads to a really interesting paradox. Common sense might tell you, hey, if things are so unpredictable, maybe we should plan less. But what the most successful leaders are actually doing is the exact opposite. They are investing more in planning, but it's a whole new kind of planning. To really get the new way, we've got to understand the old one. The traditional golden rule basically treated a project like a math problem. The goal was to solve for every variable, eliminate every single risk, and then pawn off any leftover uncertainty to somebody else, all before you even started. It was this quest for perfect predictability in a world that is anything but predictable.
And this slide just lays out the shift perfectly. The old way was all about planning the journey, trying to create this perfect, rigid, step-by-step map from start to finish. The new reality, it's about planning for the journey. See the difference? It's not about trying to predict the future anymore. It's about building a project that can handle whatever the future throws at it. It's about preparing for the turbulence and actually learning how to use uncertainty to your advantage.
So how on earth do you actually plan for the journey? This is where the strategy gets really, really clever. It's all about reframing your biggest headaches, your biggest challenges, and turning them from these messy dilemmas into powerful guiding principles. Okay, this right here, this is the crucial mindset shift. You have to stop seeing those big project dilemmas as problems you need to avoid at all costs. Instead, you've got to see them as the raw material for your strategy. The best project leaders out there don't run from these tensions, they lean into them and use them as the very foundation for success.
This table, this is basically the new playbook. On the left, you've got a fundamental dilemma that sinks most projects. And on the right, you've got the strategic principle that turns it into a secret weapon. Just look at the first one, the forecasting dilemma. We all know we can't perfectly predict the future, but we have to make these huge commitments anyway. The old way was to try and build a flawless forecast. The new principle? Forget that. Stop planning the journey and start planning for the journey by building in flexibility and options. And that same powerful shift applies to all these other major challenges too.
Okay, so this phrase, planning for the journey, what does it actually look like in practice? Let's be clear, it's not about throwing your plans in the trash. It's about creating smarter, more alive, more dynamic ones.
This layering model gives us a fantastic roadmap. It's not about avoiding risk. It's about strategically engaging with it, one layer at a time. So you start by really deeply understanding your risks. Then, instead of just trying to get rid of them, you build in options and flexibility. You give yourself ways to pivot if the world changes. Next, you get proactive. You actually transform some of those risks through smart partnerships or maybe by changing the rules of the game. And then finally, the most powerful step, you strategically embrace the risks that are left.
the ones you are uniquely good at managing. That's where you create incredible, undeniable value.
So all of this builds to a really powerful new philosophy. You could call it the new golden rule for managing the kind of massive, complex projects that are going to define our future.
And here it is. If you remember one thing from this, let it be this. Successful projects are not selected, but shaped. Think about that. Success doesn't come from finding some perfect project on paper at the very beginning. No way. It comes from taking a promising idea and actively, constantly guiding it through the chaos by nurturing it, adapting it, and course-correcting all along the way. It's a continuous act of creation, not just a one-time decision.
So this brings it all back to you. Think about the projects you're working on right now. Look at those core dilemmas again. The forecasting, the interdependency, the exposure. Which one of those can you stop fighting against like it's a roadblock and start transforming into your greatest strategic advantage? Seriously, the answer to that question, it could change everything.